Risk taker, businessman, sports and entertainment promoter, and passionate about making Florida the best place to live, shop, work, and play. It's time for the Joe Mullins Radio Show.
Hello, Florida. This is Joe Mullins of the Live, Work, Shop, Play Show, and welcome to the most amazing Mother's Day weekend. The election's over. The drama has stopped in most people's mind. But has it? Today, I've got a very special guest with me. I've got a good friend and a colleague, Brian McMillan with the Palm Coast Observer. Brian, welcome to the show today.
Good to be on here. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Now, Brian, your headlines have been going crazy the last few months in this city of Palm Coast. What is going on in Palm Coast?
Yeah, it is. It's been a pretty wild time with politics in Palm Coast. You know, they all kind of started last August when Mayor Mike Norris, he won the primary and there was a resignation. And so they had to fill a seat, and the city council appointed a one-star general, a real respectable guy named Charles Gambaro. And but there was a lot of question at the time whether he should fill out the rest of the 2 years of that term, because the resignation was, within the first 2 years of a 4-year term. So should he fill out just until the 2-year, period ended, or should he go farther than that and fill out the full, rest of the 4 years? And there was a lot of discussion. The city council agreed that they would appoint him to fill out till 2028. But there was a lot of dispute about that. And Mayor Norris, Mike Norris, who eventually won the election, he felt that seat should have been vacated and another special election or another appointment should have happened. But he was basically overruled. No one wanted to go along with that. And fast forward till now, he's still kind of hanging on to that kind of issue. And he has gone so far as to say that city council member, Gambaro, every vote he makes is illegitimate. And, he's had a lot of struggles with it. Well, then it turns out that Mayor Norris has, behind closed doors, requested the resignations of the acting city manager and the chief of staff, which is not allowed in the city charter. And so when Gambaro heard about that, he made a big deal about it in a city council meeting in March and said, we need to investigate this. The city council agreed. Mayor Norris is saying, well, you shouldn't be able to even say this against me because you're illegitimate to begin with. And the charter was broken when you were, you stayed in your office. And so this has gone back and forth, quite a bit over the past few weeks, and into about 6 weeks now, actually, and since we're, into middle of May, 2 months. So now the investigation was completed. An outside law firm agreed that Mayor Norris has broken the charter and should not have requested resignations of people that he wasn't allowed to do. And so Gambaro, the guy who was appointed, actually made a motion to ask the governor to remove Mayor Norris from his seat. And so in response to that, Mayor Norris has now sued the city and the city council and the supervisor of elections to try to remove Gambaro from the seat. And so it's pretty unusual, a mayor suing his own city. And, Norris has refused to participate in a few recent meetings and things. And so it's been very divisive in the city and made a lot of headlines. And it's, not good for the city that this is all happening, but it is what it is. We're just reporting the news. So, yeah, would you think that it's crazier now than it was when you were serving in elected capacity, Joe?
Brian, when I served, there was a lot of stuff going on. There was COVID. There was just things that we had never experienced before. There's a couple of things that I'd say as an elected official that I realized. First thing I learned when I got into office, you can want all the best things in the world, but if you don't have 3 votes, you're going to do nothing. Mm-hmm. And we seem to see that happening here, a mayor against 4, and I want to talk about that a little bit more. The second thing, I also realized that if you want to look good in that seat and you want to get things done, praise your staff, encourage your staff. These guys are well-trained. They're some of the best in the world running these cities and counties that we have. We've got some great people, the way they handle our infrastructure and do things. Sure, we have issues. Sure, we have problems, but every county across the state of Florida and the country does. Orlando's dealing with a lot of issues, which we got this growth issue. You got Tampa saying the same thing. They get hit. They get everything kind of settled down for a little bit, and then a hurricane comes in, and all of a sudden they're devastated. Sarasota, same way. You get Jacksonville. Everybody has these issues. I've not been to a county or city that doesn't, but I honestly would say we work together. We got a lot of things done, like broadband through the county. We got mental health services addressed. We got infrastructure money that we've never seen before. So yes, there was drama, and I probably definitely had my share of it and had my share of fights and battles. But at the end of the day, we walked away from the battle, we agreed, and we moved forward in getting some things done. We might have had different approaches, but we have a long laundry list of stuff we've got done. When a government fights like this, and I honestly have got to say, I've never heard of a mayor suing his own city. That's insane. But I do know that you've got one guy in the office, and he's very concerned, and he's calling some things out. I have talked to some of the employees, and they said this intimidation and bully factoring has occurred. They certainly, like you said, was an investigation, and they said they found that out. How did that investigation go? Let's talk a little bit about it, because let's talk about some of the facts that lead up to this, because you got some in this public area and in other areas saying that the media is just beating up on a conservative again. And I'm going to tell you, I'm one of the biggest Trump supporters in the country. I am very strong and pro, but I don't see this being that way this time. Let's talk a little bit about that investigation and what the media has, the stance that you guys have taken with this.
Yeah, so the investigation was called for by the city, by the city council. Like, it wasn't just Charles Gambaro who said, let's have this happen. It was the other council members all agreed unanimously to have the investigation because of how troubling it was. There were multiple reports from city staff and the Human Resources Department saying that Mayor Norris had basically demeaned and kind of bullied and used a lot of profanity and kind of inserted himself into their jobs, which is against the city charter. You can't interfere is what the word is in the charter. And so they agreed to do the investigation. They hired an outside law firm to come in and do that. They interviewed 15 people, including Mayor Norris himself and a bunch of staff members. They took a couple weeks to do it. And that's what the investigation results were, that yes, he has broken the charter. Yes, he has created a hostile work environment. And Mayor Norris has been very adamant that he is just doing what he promised he would do, that he thinks the mayor should have the ability to request resignations from people if he thinks they're not doing a good job. He said that in the interview to the law firm, basically just kind of doubling down on it. And, the media's job, I don't know what anybody expects us to do to just not report on that. I mean, it's big news. But I think that really what it comes down to is that Mayor Norris, and my job, I think, and the Observer, the local newspaper, our job is to build bridges of understanding. Let's try to understand what each side is really feeling and where they're coming from. And Mayor Norris is coming from a point where he feels like the growth is out of control. The developers are getting what they want, and the people are suffering as a result. And there happen to be a lot of people that agree with that. There's a lot of people that felt that they should have supported Mayor Norris when he called for a building moratorium on residential building. And they didn't even get to go into a lot of detail about what that would all entail because the rest of the city council disagreed. They didn't support it. And so Mayor Norris, about a week ago, after all this investigation stuff, and he's being very isolated, everyone's kind of voting against him in the city council is kind of how I perceive it. He posted a wanted poster. Did you see that on social media?
I did. It just, I'm getting shocked at how silly this is getting and how childish it's getting. I did see the wanted poster, and I thought to myself, this is stirring up a community, dividing a community, and creating chaos. It's not even a party line. It's not a Republican, a Democrat thing. It is just pure chaos.
It is. It was a divisive thing. But again, the thing that I want to point out is what the wanted poster is just like him in an old timey, get up, and some kind of AI poster probably that was created. But it said wanted for standing up to the developers in Palm Coast, wanted for doing that, as though that was something that he is now being punished for. He's a wanted man because he's doing this, as though standing up to developers is wrong. And he's kind of like playing, showing that he's standing up for people. He's being the Robin Hood. He's being the martyr that the community should rally around, and that the big power brokers, including his fellow city council members, are kind of now like targeting him. Well, I think the way forward here is, how do we have a discussion as a community about solutions to these problems? It's true that growth has not been paying for itself. we had a consultant come in to talk about the water utility rate, and he said in the city council, so did the chief of staff in the city for the city staff, saying that the state laws are not allowing the community, the city of Palm Coast, to charge enough for developers to pay for the infrastructure that comes along with it. And that might be a very unique situation for Palm Coast because of our lower housing prices and things like that compared to the rest of the state. But the point is that there are situations and circumstances in Palm Coast that a lot of people do feel like are kind of, putting us at a disadvantage. And Mayor Norris is standing up for that in his perception. Now, it is doing it in a way that's isolating and causing division, and that's not good for the community. But I think that we need to have a hard discussion about what are we going to do then? Okay, we voted against the moratorium. Now what? We can't keep clinging to the moratorium idea because that was voted down. And I think Mayor Norris, I hope, maybe he can propose what's the next step then. If it's not a moratorium, then what else does he want to have happen? Because right now, it's just like you said, you got to have 3 votes. You have to work together to find a solution to make something happen, not just cause, there's a lot of political drama right now, and it's not healthy for the city.
Absolutely, isn't it? And, versus the drama we had back then, we would argue we had personality differences, but at the end of the day, the meetings would follow through. There wouldn't be screaming and yelling. We get things done. We may have not all walked away with what we wanted, but you know what was called, Brian? We called it in there negotiations. We negotiated. We didn't sit there and say, okay, it's my way or no way, all my way or no way. We didn't act like kids, and we got a lot of stuff done. I don't see this commission and this city government getting anything done. And it's sad for the county because you got a quieter county government that's not doing as much. You got a city who, I used to say in there, I don't know why we've got a city and a county government anyway. I think we need to consolidate to one like Jacksonville did when you have a city with 100,000 people in it, and then you got a county with the remaining 20. Or actually, you got more than that when you count Flagler, the other 5 cities of the area. So you have a lot less people. And I said, one of the best things would be to consolidate all this and get it into one. But there's no way I'd go near a government like this. This is not going to get anything done. Tradition shows they're going to be arguing and fighting. So when you close your ears and you start fighting and start dictating, that's when the council kind of steps back because you got a lot of unique personalities. Now, you brought up something very interesting in saying this. You said that he came in and wanted a moratorium. Building brings in revenue. Maybe it's not bringing in enough, and I think that needs to be addressed and looked at. But new building, new growth brings in revenue. We used it in our term of running the county. When we ran the county and did the stuff, we used it to get the developer to put money towards the water. If you remember what was that water plant down at Plantation Bay? We used it to get that fixed and get it to the state. Remember, that was a big topic. It was the hot topic. It's not even talked about today. It's solved. We solved that by getting with the state and doing a private-public partnership with an entity. Palm Coast certainly has a big problem with the water, and instead of talking about solving it, they're talking about stopping growth. And now, let me ask you, Brian, you're a smart guy. You've interviewed, you've looked at these issues. Any of these issues they're talking about, infrastructure, flooding, water not being there, if we stop growth, is that going to fix the already ailing problem we have? And is it going to cut off an ability to bring income to fix that?
Yeah, that's the hard thing is that if you don't have the growth and you lose the impact fees that come with growth, then you really can't catch up. And then even worse, then you're even worse trouble.
Yeah, where do you go to get the money if you stop growth? You got to go to where?
You got to go to the taxpayers. No one wants to do that.
Absolutely. The taxes are outrageous. They're high enough. We're seeing fees with condos and with property tax values go up like mad. Even though the condos are going down, the property appraisers are still raising the values. We're seeing them go crazy. The homeowner is going to have to shelter that because you're not going to solve the problems unless you go out and get grants and stuff. And these grants are tied to growth. They're tied to being able to grow your community, see your economy thrive. Growth is not bad, but unplanned and unwatched growth is bad. I will agree with that. Moving back to this commission and this mayor, the mayor's throwing a lot of things that he wants done, but he's not bringing up alternatives to it. It's easy to go out and say, I want to deal with the homeless, but then you don't have an option to deal with the homeless. You just want to deal with it. You want to bring it up. Is a lot of this appear to you to be more political swaggering to voters and trying to just appeal a certain group? Or do you see that he has a plan and he just isn't being listened to by his other four colleagues?
Well, I mean, again, the biggest plan that I've heard so far is that he, wanted a moratorium. He also had been interested in talking to this company called Belvedere Terminals, which has been making some headlines around the state, including Ormond Beach and Jacksonville and other places, where they want to build a fuel terminal that would be of great strategic value to the state, because you could store fuel and not have us get knocked out during hurricanes if we don't have enough fuel. But it does, then a lot of people don't want to live next to it. So there was he was advocating for that in part because it would be more industrial development. It would help Palm Coast's tax base. And that kind of ran into trouble because, again, people didn't want to live next to it. So he was proactive in that, and there could be more that's coming. Part of the struggle is that people read the headlines and again, I don't think it's the headline's fault. I think it's just, it's accurate. Somebody criticized the Observer and me for writing a headline that said Mike Norris was censured in a 4-0 vote, that somehow meant that we were discrediting the mayor. But I don't know how else we could say it besides he was censured in a 4-0 vote, So I think that's another place where sometimes if people don't agree with what's happening, they might blame the media, even though we're just reporting on what happened. But the point is that this is coming at a time in the city of Palm Coast's history where we don't have a full-time city manager. So at a time when we're trying to hire a city manager, this is when the mayor and so much strife on the city council. I mean, if you're a city manager candidate looking to move across the country and have a new phase in your career as a city manager, this doesn't really make you want to go to Palm Coast. And we struggled with getting candidates. All the city council members were disappointed with the type of candidates that we had. And we're down now to one candidate left. And they're going to talk about it, at the next meeting. But this kind of turmoil makes it harder to get a city manager, almost impossible. And it makes it very difficult for a company to come in and feel confident to invest and provide jobs and help solve a lot of the problems that we have in the local economy because of all that strife. And no one wants to work with a city council or a mayor who is, kind of going alone and not willing to work collaboratively.
Well, Brian, that's something very valid that I hear. And we saw the same thing in Orlando when the Disney stuff started. It started scaring other businesses. During the Masters, I entertain and host a lot of the major corporations around the world. And one of them was talking about coming to Florida. And they said, Joe, the county you're in, he said, what is it called? And I said, Flagler. And he said, we're interested in bringing a business there. And we want to look at areas in Florida. Well, he went to his phone and he Googled Flagler and he looked at me and he said, oh, y'all got a lot going on there. Maybe we need to wait and kind of let all this settle out. And it does. It impacts them. We have people that want to move there, and then they go, oh, my God, is the water that bad? Is the infrastructure that bad? And you got a lot of local people that go, yeah, we don't want you here anyway. Don't move here. But we don't want to pay higher taxes. We don't want to pay higher fees. So it's easy to say that, but without a solution, it's not fair. And then if you're a conservative, which most of these people claim to be conservative Republicans, this mayor certainly campaigned on that. Do you have land rights? Do you have the right to sell your property? I mean, where does the moratorium start? Does it start on the homeowner saying you can't sell your property for X amount of dollars to get out of there? Why did the one next to it get able to do it? So you're not going to stop growth. Let's get realistic here. No one can stop growth. If you and I had the ability to stop growth, you wouldn't be involved in the paper and I wouldn't be on a radio show. You and I would do an anti-aging thing and we'd stop it and be billionaires. But at the end of the day, you can't stop growth. You got to define it. You got to welcome it. You got to say, okay, how can we make it work for us?
I also think that expectations are so important. I mean, in Palm Coast, that it was started by a developer, almost 50 years ago now. And they platted out this land for everyone to come and move in. And about 2/3 of those lots or 3/4 of them are now full. But we forget that history sometimes, and that we were the newcomer not that long ago, and other people are now moving in, and we see that it's making the traffic worse. And it's easy to forget that we were the ones that made it worse for the previous people. And I think just some of it just needs to be, love your neighbor. Let's try to get along. Yes, we used to have no rush hour in Palm Coast. Now we do. There's really no way around it. If it's a nice place to live, then people are going to move here. And
right, who's the last person that can come in and shut the gate and say no one else can come? It's not
exactly
fair.
It's exactly right. And so, I at the same time, we're not trying to belittle any opinions. Like that is stressful, and people feel like, I just put all my life savings, I moved here, I retired, I'm in Palm Coast now, and now it's not really what I expected anymore, because 5-6 years later, there's a lot more homes and there's more development, and the trees that I thought were up there forever, they just came down because someone owned that land and I wasn't really aware of that. So people feel powerless, and that's not a fun feeling. And so, trying to figure out ways to bridge that so that people are more welcoming. How do you change that? I don't know. But I think that's the kind of discussion we need to have. How do we develop a welcoming attitude? How do we make the most of the growth? Maybe it's partly education about, like, what about cities that aren't growing? What about cities that are failing, that are going backward, that people are moving out of? There's a whole other set of problems that come with that. And the problems of too much growth, too much excitement over moving to a city, usually those are, yes, there are problems, but it's like, you'd rather have those problems than a city that's kind of downward spiraling and disappearing,
The old saying is, if you're not growing, you're dying. And we definitely don't want to be a dying community. There's so much opportunity here. But one thing that we will follow and look forward to is following the Palm Coast Observer. Now, let's let our listeners know, because you also are online. You do up-to-the-minute reporting. We're not a news source. We're a show where we give people the ability to speak and bring their side of the view in. And I certainly welcome the mayor. I welcome the mayor to come and talk and hear his view. Love to have both of y'all on at the same time to talk and let him hopefully hear what he's saying and understand. I like the mayor. I think he could be a great asset. And I always went into anyone getting elected, whether they're Republican or Democrat, and hope they succeed, because if they fail, that affects us. And right now, this city is on the verge of failing, and failing miserably. It's certainly setting a reputation to the world that's bad. How can listeners hear more and follow the story? Because this story hasn't ended, and it seems like it's going to be a lot more juicy as it goes with this recent lawsuit.
Yeah, you can go to our website every day. There's new stories up. It's observerlocalnews.com, and we've got all the Palm Coast and Ormond Beach and local news that you can have. And one last thing about Mayor Norris is he was elected. I mean, tens of thousands of people wanted him as the mayor. And so I think that he has a great opportunity here to do something that will help to unite and move forward. And I hope that he takes that opportunity.
Brian, I want to thank you for joining us. And no matter what city or what county you're in across the state of Florida and across the country, you're dealing with growth issues. You're dealing with challenges. You're dealing with elected officials fighting like we've never seen before. We're dealing with a climate in politics that's probably one of the darkest in our history. We hope to see brighter. We hope to see good things. But our economy in our country is a result of our government being shaky and weak. We've got to come together. We got to work together. And at the end of the day, we got to remember the biggest role of this game. Number one, public safety. Number two, strong economy. Number three, a safe, beautiful, preserved community that you have growth that's healthy for the community going in. Traffic is definitely an issue. It's definitely something you want to look at, but you got to ask yourself, how do big cities like Orlando, Tampa, have 10 times the population and they're moving a little bit better than we are? It's called technology. We've got to be focused on it. Now, all of a sudden, the dialogue has changed from improving our community, making it stronger, making it more efficient. As the Observer has reported, they're now talking about moratorium, stopping growth, stopping things. Stopping it will not solve the problems that we're faced with today. And I want to thank you for joining us today.
I appreciate it.
And remember, listeners, live, work, shop, play Florida. Have a great weekend.